This program is supported by PMEG Premium at Protect Plus Gold. Sama-sama sa laban, walang iwanan.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International. Hello, CJ.
Hello, Alma, and good evening to everyone watching us tonight. Here are the headlines.
Myanmar's ambassador to the UK said he has been locked out of the London embassy. The country's ambassador said Myanmar's military has taken over this embassy. Our ASEAN Bureau correspondent Gila Pablo will give us the details.
Yeah, he's going to go knock on the door.
Tokyo governor calls for a partial state of emergency to curb the spike in number of coronavirus infections. We have Dennis Liu joining us from Japan later on.
The Philippine Health Department suspended Thursday the use of the AstraZeneca COVID-19 jab for people under 60 after reports of blood clots overseas.
And 1 in 3 people who overcome COVID-19 suffer from a neurological or psychiatric diagnosis 6 months on, according to the largest study so far published on the mental toll that long COVID takes on survivors.
First, a leading Myanmar actor, singer, and model who has backed the country's anti-coup protests was arrested on Thursday. Reports said as the junta hunts more than 100 celebrities for supporting the movement. The country has been rocked by daily protests since the military seized power on February 1, and the authorities have launched a bloody crackdown on dissent, with hundreds killed and more than 2,500 arrested. Paing Tagkon, 24, a star in both Myanmar and neighboring Thailand, has been active in the protest movement, both in person at rallies and through his massive social media following. He was taken into custody in the North Dagon area of Yangon at 5 a.m. from his mother's home, according to local media reports. And according to recent posts on his social media, where he had more than 1 million followers on Facebook and Instagram, he has been in poor health. Paing Tagkon is also famous in Thailand and has appeared in TV commercials and shows.
The United States on Wednesday warned China against what the Philippines see as increasingly aggressive moves, reminding Beijing of Washington's obligations to its partners. Watch this.
Including, well, Secretary Blinken actually spoke to this just a couple days ago. He said on March 28 that the United States stands with our ally, the Philippines, in the face of the PRC's maritime militia amassing at Whitsun Reef. He said we will always stand by our allies and stand up for the rules-based international order. As we have stated before, an armed attack against the Philippines' armed forces, public vessels, or aircraft in the Pacific, including in the South China Sea, will trigger our obligations under the U.S.-Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty. When it comes to this amassing, as the Secretary said, we share the concerns of our Philippine allies regarding the continued reported massing of PRC maritime militia near Whitsun Reef. And we have seen the reports that vessels have also spread to other parts of the South China Sea. We have reiterated our strong support for the Philippines, and we have called on the PRC to abide by the 2016 Arbitral Tribunal Award under the Law of the Sea Convention, which is final and legally binding on all parties.
More than 200 Chinese boats were first spotted on March 7 at Whitsun Reef, around 320 kilometers or 200 miles west of Palawan Island in the contested South China Sea, although many have since scattered across the Spratleys Islands. China, which claims almost the entirety of the resource-rich sea, has refused weeks of appeals by the Philippines to withdraw the vessels, which Manila says unlawfully entered its exclusive economic zone. President Joe Biden has vowed a robust defense of allies, and in a rare point of continuity with his predecessor Donald Trump, has supported strong pushback against Chinese assertiveness.
In the related news, the Philippine Defense Department said it was keeping all our options open as a diplomatic row with Beijing grows over hundreds of Chinese vessels in the contested South China Sea. Take a look. Tensions over the resource-rich waters have spiked in recent weeks after more than 200 Chinese boats were detected at Whitsun Reef in the Spratly Islands, where China and the Philippines have rival claims. As the situation in the South China Sea evolves, we keep all our options open in managing the situation, including leveraging our partnerships with other nations, such as the U.S. That, according to Philippine Defense Department spokesman Arsenio Andolong today. Andolong's comments came after the U.S. reminded China of Washington's treaty obligations to the Philippines in the event of an attack in the waters. Many of the boats detected at Whitsun Reef on March 7 have since scattered across the Spratly archipelago, which is also claimed in whole or in part by Brunei, Malaysia, Taiwan, and Vietnam.
Meanwhile, the European Medicines Agency says blood clots are a very rare side effect of the AstraZeneca coronavirus vaccine, and that the jab's benefits overall outweigh the risk of side effects. The announcement came after the EMA examined 86 blood clotting cases, 18 of which were fatal, out of around 25 million people in Europe who received the AstraZeneca vaccine. Most of the cases were women or are in women and are aged under 60. But EMA Chief Emer Cook said no particular risk factor had been identified and the clots may be linked to an immune response to the vaccine. Watch this.
It's very important. The Prague, after a very in-depth analysis, has concluded that the reported cases of unusual blood clotting following vaccination with the AstraZeneca vaccine should be listed as possible side effects of the vaccine. These are very rare side effects. The risk of mortality from COVID is much greater than the risk of mortality from these side effects. First of all, I want to start by stating that our Safety Committee, the Pharmacovigilance and Risk Assessment Committee of the European Medicines Agency, has confirmed that the benefits of the AstraZeneca vaccine in preventing COVID-19 overall outweigh the risks of side effects. This vaccine has proven to be highly effective. It prevents severe disease and hospitalization, and it is saving lives. Vaccination is extremely important in helping us in the fight against COVID-19, and we need to use the vaccines we have to protect us from the devastating effects.
What we have seen so far is that indeed the risk seems to be predominantly in younger age, 60 years and younger, but it also occurs in the elderly, and we have seen that it predominantly affects women. What we do know is that COVID-19 is a very serious disease, and we know that the benefits of the AstraZeneca vaccine have been established. It prevents COVID disease, it prevents hospitalization, and it prevents mortality. So in that respect, PROC feels that the overall benefits outweigh the risks.
Let's go back to London, where Myanmar's ambassador to the UK said he has been locked out of the London embassy. The country's ambassador said Myanmar's military has taken over the embassy. Gila Pablo is following the developments from our ASEAN Bureau. Hello, Gila.
Yes, Alma, good evening.
Go ahead, Gila.
Britain on Thursday condemned bullying by the Myanmar junta after the country's ambassador to London was ousted in an extraordinary diplomatic coup after calling for the release of civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi. Diplomats loyal to the Myanmar military authorities seized control of the embassy on Wednesday, leaving Ambassador Kwai Min locked out in the street. In a statement read on his behalf, Myanmar ambassador in London, Kyaw Zarmid, says he has been locked out of the embassy by the military attaché after having been recalled by the military regime, and calls on the UK to not back those who are working for the junta.
This is kind of coup. Okay. Thank you.
Who is in the building?
Defense attaché. They occupy my embassy.
Due to his stand, the Myanmar embassy in London has been seized by the military attaché yesterday evening. The ambassador has been locked out since then. There was a coup in Myanmar in February, now in a similar situation in central London. Therefore, we believe the UK government would not back those who are working for the military junta. And we also would like to urge UK government to send them back the military attaché, and as the UK government has done rightfully in the past.
UK sources said the Myanmar authorities had given official notice of Kwai Min's termination as ambassador. And in line with diplomatic policy, the government had no choice but to accept it. Britain confirmed Thursday that it could no longer recognize Myanmar's ambassador in London after the ruling junta issued formal notification that he had been withdrawn for supporting the deposed government. UK sources said the government, in line with diplomatic policy, had to accede to the junta's decision regarding Kwai Min after he was locked out of the embassy on Wednesday. Ambassador Kwai Min last month broke ranks with his country's military junta. Meanwhile, in another development, Myanmar security forces killed at least 11 civilians and wounded at least 10 others Wednesday when they fired on government protesters in the northwestern town of Kalai, according to reports received by VOA's Burmese service. One protest organizer told the service the troops tasked with removing barricades set up by the protester opened fire indiscriminately on the demonstrators, who are demanding that Aung San Suu Kyi's civilian government be returned to power. International powers have voiced anger and dismay at the junta's brutal approach, but the UN Security Council has stopped short of considering sanctions, with both China and Russia against the move. A group representing the ousted civilian government on Wednesday began talks with UN investigators, saying it had gathered more than 270,000 pieces of evidence showing rights abuses by the junta. Back to you, Alma.
All right. Thank you very much, Gila, for your update, and we look forward to more updates as we follow this developing story. Thank you, Gila. Stay safe.
Thank you so much, Alma. This is Gila Pablo reporting live from Bangkok, Thailand. We live in interesting times.
Back here in the Philippines now, where the health department suspended Thursday the use of the AstraZeneca COVID-19 jab for people under 60 years old after reports of blood clots overseas, in a setback for the country's already slow vaccine rollout. It comes amid a record surge in coronavirus infections that has forced more than 24 million people in the capital and surrounding provinces into a lockdown. Watch this.
So ito po actually nakipag-usap na rin po ako sa DOH, no? Yun nga po ang nakita ng European Medicines Agency ay merong very very rare, no? Kasi out of 200 million na mga nabakunahan ng AstraZeneca, meron po parang mga 16 cases, no? Na tinitingnan nila na possible connected nga po ng blood clotting ay pagbabago ng platelet. Chinek ko po sa ating National Adverse Events Following Immunization Committee, wala naman daw po tayong kaso na re-report na ganito na napagbaba ng platelet at saka thrombosis dito sa atin. At yun nga po, nakikita ito usually daw sa mga kababaihan na less than 60 years old. So we asked DOH na kung meron pa kung natitirang AstraZeneca vaccine, siguro ay wag muna natin gamitin sa mga people below 60 years old until we get clearer evidence at saka clearer guidance from WHO tsaka sa atin pong mga expert. Ang ano naman po actually, wala na po tayong AstraZeneca vaccine at this time dahil talagang naubos na po natin ito, may pailan-ilan na lamang daw at ang susunod natin na ina-expect ay sa isang buwan pa, no, within 1 month pa. So that will give us time to study the evidence and to see kung magkakaroon po tayo ng panibagong guidance sa paggamit ng AstraZeneca vaccine.
The Philippines has received around 2.5 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines so far, the majority from China's Sinovac. It also got 525,600 AstraZeneca doses through the COVAX program, most of which have been administered already, according to official data. The country expects another 3 million AstraZeneca doses in the coming months. The European Medicines Agency examined 86 blood clotting cases, 18 of which were fatal out of around 25 million people in Europe who received the AstraZeneca vaccine. Most of the cases were in women aged under 60. Several European countries have suspended the use of AstraZeneca's vaccine for younger populations after it was earlier banned outright in several places over blood clot scares. The EU's medicines regulator said Wednesday blood clots should be listed as rare side effects of the jab, but the benefits continue to outweigh the risks.
Indonesia warned Thursday it faced delays receiving over 100 million doses of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine as export restrictions in India and company supply holdups threaten one of the world's biggest jab rollouts. The Southeast Asian nation's health minister, Budi Gunadi Sadikin, slammed the slowdown and said the government was trying to find a solution. He said we have about 100 million vaccine doses with an uncertain arrival schedule. This he told to Parliament, and then he said this is not something we can accept, and we immediately communicated with AstraZeneca. The world's fourth biggest nation is one of the hardest hit in Asia, with more than 1.5 million virus cases and over 42,000 deaths. Jakarta has announced an ambitious plan to jab more than 181 million of its nearly 270 million people within a year, relying heavily on China's Sinovac jab and AstraZeneca's treatment. Indonesia had been on track to receive some 54 million doses of AstraZeneca's vaccine through the COVAX Global Vaccine Sharing Program. It is also expecting another 50 million doses in direct deals with the UK-based pharma giant and state-owned Biopharma.
In other COVID news, the number of confirmed coronavirus cases in Iran passed the 2 million mark Thursday, according to the health ministry in an announcement, as the daily caseload reached a record high. The virus has infected 2,006,934 people in Iran and killed 63,884, according to the ministry spokeswoman Sima Sadatlari in a televised remark. She added that 22,586 new confirmed cases in the past 24 hours, an increase of more than 1,600 over the previous record high registered just Wednesday. The Islamic Republic has been battling the Middle East's deadliest coronavirus outbreak. Officials have blamed the recent surge in cases on family visits and leisure trips made during the Iranian New Year holidays that started on March 21st.
Okay, let's head on over to Japan, where the Tokyo governor is calling for a partial state of emergency to curb the spike in the number of virus infections. Dennis Liu joins us live. Hello, Dennis.
Hello, Alma. Good evening. Tokyo Governor Yuriko Koike urged the central government on Thursday to grant her the legal authority to employ stronger coronavirus measures in the capital. Koike has submitted a formal request on Thursday asking the central government to give her the designation she needs to take new countermeasures meant to prevent a third state of emergency, which could include asking dining establishments to close by 8 p.m. An hour earlier than what's currently being requested, the measures requested by Koike, often referred to as Mambo, the shortened version of the full name in Japanese, are new and became possible after Japan's a revision of Japan's infectious disease laws in February. They allow local leaders to use measures that aim to prevent the need for a stricter rules under a state of emergency. Osaka, Hyogo, and Miyagi were the first three prefectures to enact the quasi-emergency measures. Tokyo reported 545 new cases on Thursday, a day after it saw 555, its highest daily figure in more than 2 months. Nationwide, the country reported an additional 3,451 cases on Wednesday, the most in a single day. Since late January, Tokyo officials warned that if the spread of variants isn't detected early and the ongoing surge in new cases isn't contained, it could turn into a large outbreak that surpasses the previous 3 waves seen over the past 15 months. Alma?
What about the Olympics? Do you have any update on the Olympics, Dennis?
Oh, yes, Alma. Japan is considering prioritizing its Olympic athletes for coronavirus vaccines, aiming to get them inoculated before the pandemic postponed Tokyo Games open on July 23rd. Private broadcaster Nippon TV and other media also reported the plan, with some pointing out that the proposed timeline would mean healthy young athletes would finish their inoculations before some of Japan's elderly. However, top government spokesman Katsunobu Kato said there was no fact in the claim that the government is studying such a plan, and the government has no intention of discussing it at this point. But he told reporters the government would be closely watching discussions on athletes' health issues. Among Olympic officials, the Tokyo Games organizers and host city Tokyo, the reports were met with criticism, with one Japanese Twitter user calling on all the athletes to come out and say they won't do this. IOC President Thomas Bach has said vaccination is not a requirement for athletes competing at the Tokyo Games, but that Olympic officials will encourage participants to get the jab. The IOC plans to offer vaccines secured from China to athletes in countries without access. Back to you, Alma.
All right. Thank you very much, Dennis, for your updates there in Japan. Stay safe, always. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Alma. Reporting live from Tokyo, Japan, this is Dennis Liu. We live in interesting times.
To Canada now, where Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on Tuesday urged pandemic-weary Canadians to hang in there a few more weeks as the country's vaccine rollout accelerates, but COVID-19 variants surge. Watch this.
Around the world, countries are facing a very serious third wave of this pandemic. And right now, so is Canada. This isn't the news any of us wanted, but hospitalizations are surging. ICU beds are filling up, variants are spreading, and even people who had convinced themselves they didn't need to be concerned are getting sick. Even if the sun is shining and the weather is getting warmer, COVID-19 isn't done with us yet. And that means we all have to hold tight a little longer. We need to flatten the curve to save lives. To young people, you've made tremendous sacrifices over the past year to protect your parents, grandparents, and the heroes on the front lines. Thank you. You are saving lives. We need you to keep doing this a while longer. If you can stay home, please do. And to frontline workers, I know you're tired, exhausted. I know you're really scared about what the coming weeks could bring because you're seeing the seriousness of these new variants and the spike in cases. You have done an unbelievable job over the past year. Know that we will continue to be there for you, and we will get through this together. If you need to take time off because you're sick or self-isolating, we've made sure the Canada Recovery Sickness Benefit is still there for you and any worker who needs it.
A surge in variants, up nearly threefold in the past 2 weeks, and related hospitalizations are causing growing alarm, Chief Public Health Officer Teresa Tam said. More than 15,200 variant cases have so far been reported, with the highest numbers found in Alberta, British Columbia, Ontario, and Quebec.
Staying in Canada, the country's economic engine and the most populous province of Ontario was ordered into a 4-week lockdown to slow the spread of a new wave of infections. The forcing of residents to stay home and the closing of retail stores, except for curbside pickup, comes just days after already hardened public health restrictions went into effect but have now been deemed insufficient to contain the outbreak. Take a look.
There's no doubt that this third wave has been different from anything we've faced so far. The reality is, despite everything we've done so far, the COVID-19 situation in Ontario is getting worse as these new variants continue to spread. Our hospitals are reaching capacity, and patients in the GTA must now be sent to other parts of the province for care. I can't stress this enough. Things are extremely, extremely serious right now, and I'm extremely concerned. The situation is evolving rapidly, hour by hour. And as things change, as we learn more about these deadly new variants, as we see new problems arise, we need to adapt. We need to move quickly and decisively. That's why today, on the advice of the Chief Medical Officer of Health, I'm declaring a state of emergency with a province-wide stay-at-home order effective 12:01 a.m. Thursday. This will be in effect for 4 weeks. With a few exceptions, the stay-at-home order will be similar to what we went through earlier this year. To boil it down as simple as possible, folks, please, unless it's for an essential reason, please stay home.
Now, this marks the second time so far this year that a province-wide emergency has been declared. Ontario, which has been the worst hit by the pandemic in Canada, added 3,200 new cases, or almost 3/4 of all new COVID infections across the country in the past day. More transmissible virus variants, which account for 2/3 of new cases in the province, are outpacing a stepped-up vaccination rollout.
Health workers treat COVID-19 patients in an intensive care unit at Rio de Janeiro's Ronaldo Gazola Hospital in Brazil registers more than 4,000 COVID-19 deaths in 24 hours for the first time. Watch this.
A gente está percebendo muito um elevado percentual de internações em pessoas abaixo de 60 anos, tá? Depois de um ano é muito difícil, né? Você não ter uma equipe que esteja, né, sobrecarregada, que não esteja abalada psicologicamente, porque os eventos adversos eles são muito intensos e a sobrecarga de trabalho é muito grande.
One in 3 people who overcome COVID-19 suffer from a neurological or psychiatric diagnosis 6 months on. That is according to the largest study so far published on the mental toll that long COVID takes on survivors. Authors said the research, printed Wednesday in the Lancet Psychiatry Journal, proved that COVID-19 patients were significantly more likely to develop brain conditions than those suffering from other respiratory tract infections. Studying the health records of more than 230,000 patients who had recovered from COVID-19, they found that 34% were diagnosed with a neurological or psychiatric condition within 6 months. The most common conditions were anxiety, 17% of patients, and mood disorders, 14%. For 13% of patients, the disorders were their first diagnosis of a mental health issue. Incidence of neurological disorders such as brain hemorrhage, 6% or 0.6%, stroke, 2.1%, and dementia, 0.7%, was lower overall than for psychiatric disorders, but the risk for brain disorders was generally higher in patients who had severe COVID-19. Writing in a linked comment article, Jonathan Rogers from University College London said further research was needed on the long-term neurological and psychiatric outcomes among COVID-19 patients. Sadly, many of the disorders identified in this study tend to be chronic or recurrent, so we can anticipate that the impact of COVID-19 could be with us for many years, according to Rogers, who was not involved in the study.
More than 4 million new cases of COVID-19 were reported in the last week, including more than 71,000 deaths, an 11% increase according to the World Health Organization. In its latest weekly update on the coronavirus late on Tuesday evening, the UN Health Agency reported that the largest increases in case incidence were in India and the Western Pacific. All regions except for Africa reported increases in the number of deaths, with the largest increase from the Southeast Asia region, up 46%. By country, India and Brazil saw more than 500,000 new cases of infection each, followed by the United States with over 444,000 cases, Turkey with nearly 266,000, and France over 244,000.
In other news, Northern Ireland's all-party executive came together on Thursday to condemn days of violent unrest stemming from the restive British territories' pro-UK community. Destruction, violence, and the threat of violence are completely unacceptable and unjustifiable, no matter what concerns may exist in communities, the executive made up of unionists, nationalists, and centrist parties said in a statement. Nightly attacks have left dozens of police officers injured, along with a driver whose bus was firebombed late on Wednesday. Northern Ireland's Legislative Assembly interrupted its Catholic Easter break to hold an emergency debate after the unrest. Northern Ireland endured 30 years of sectarian conflict that killed 3,500 people. Unionists, paramilitaries, British security forces, and armed nationalists seeking to unite the territory with the Republic of Ireland waged battle until a landmark peace deal in 1998. The accord let unionists and nationalists coexist by blurring the status of the union, dissolving border checks with fellow European Union member Ireland. But Britain's shock Brexit vote in 2016 to quit the EU revived the need for border checks. A special protocol was agreed that shifted the controls away from the land border, but many unionists accused London of selling them out, with some unionist leaders demanding the EU protocol be scrapped. European Commission spokesman Eric Mammer also condemned the unrest in the strongest possible terms. And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
This portion is brought to you by Canriv Corporation, your ventilation and air conditioning specialist. Services offered: supply and installation of elevators, escalators, air conditioners, ventilators, jet towel, hand dryers, generators, access control system, factory automation, and modernization. For more info, please contact Ami Kanke at 0915-263-7198 or 0998-900-3224.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Sa panahon na laganap ang mga sakit, katuwang nyo ang BMEG Premium at Protect Plus Gold. Gawa sa state-of-the-art facilities ang BMEG Premium Feeds. Kaya ito ay safe, sanitized, and hygienic. Walang dalang sakit, certified, malinis, sariwa at sigurado. At para laging malinis ang paligid, gumamit ng Protect Plus Gold. Isang safe broad-spectrum disinfectant na pumapatay ng mga virus, bacteria at fungi. BMEG Premium at Protect Plus Gold. Sama-sama sa laban, walang iwanan.
Welcome back to the news. High-income countries may emerge from the COVID-19 crisis with very little scaring, while the developing countries' economic outlook, particularly the poor of them, looks much worse. That's what the IMF sees in its latest research. On this topic and on how the world avoided a systemic debt crisis and the pandemic, IMF's Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva joined Mohamed El Eryan, President of Queen's College, Cambridge University, and Vera Songwe, United Nations Under Secretary General and Executive Secretary of the Economic Commission for Africa, in a panel to discuss averting a COVID-19 debt trap on Tuesday, April 6 in Washington, D.C. Watch this.
We have some good news, but we also see danger in divergence in economic fortunes of advanced economies and developing economies. So why are people worried of a potential debt problem? They have reason to be worried. We entered the pandemic with high level of debt. And during this year and 5 months since we are in it, understandably, debt levels went further up. Why? Because revenues went down and expenditures went up. Today, public debt globally is reaching 100% of GDP. Within this, advanced economies have jumped the most, nearly 20%. Emerging markets, nearly 10%. Low-income countries, 5%.
Now, we know that the best solution to this is higher growth, and that remains by far the most desirable solution. But as Christina just said, we also have to recognize that developing countries are facing significant headwinds. Tourism isn't going to come back quickly. Remittance flows aren't going to come back quickly. FDI is going to remain uncertain, and all this is happening in the midst of the pandemic. So there is no easy growth path out of this in the short term.
First of all, I think SDR's release yesterday. Second, we do need more transparency so that we can understand how you resolve the debt. Third, we need the private sector to come to the table and come to the table both in terms of reducing market access, because countries are still going to need to go to the markets, and finally, recapitalization of the MDBs so that we get additional resources out quickly.
I feel very strongly that my institution has a responsibility to press very hard, and together with others, with the World Bank and others, to make it so that this mountain of debt that is often hidden from the naked eye can be exposed, that contracts are disclosed, and the conditions in this contract, sometimes ridiculous, are for everybody to see. On that, I have a bit more hope that the situation now is becoming difficult to a point that countries that have been resisting transparency, and actually on both sides, are more open. This is a fundamental component. If we don't know what we're talking about, we can't fix it.
In other business news, unprecedented fiscal support by governments during the pandemic has prevented more severe economic contractions and larger job losses. But risks remain of long-term scarring, the International Monetary Fund says in its Fiscal Monitor report released on Wednesday in Washington, D.C. Take a look.
The first lesson 1 year into COVID-19 is that fiscal policy can act timely and decisively. The fiscal policy response was unprecedented in speed and size. Looking across countries, we also learned that countries with easier access to finance or stronger buffers were able to give more fiscal support. They're also projected to recover faster. So what have we learned? We've learned that fiscal policy is powerful and that sound public finances are crucial in order to enable that power to be used to the fullest. In the spring 2021, we emphasized differentiation across countries. Moreover, COVID-19 is fast evolving, as are the consequences from COVID-19. Fiscal policy must stay agile and flexible to respond to this fast evolving situation. Moreover, countries are very different in their structures, in their institutions, in their financial capacity, and much else. Therefore, policies and policy advice have to be tailored to fit. A fair shot of vaccination for everybody in the world may well be the highest return global investment ever. But the Fiscal Monitor also emphasizes the importance of giving a fair shot at life success for everyone. It documents that pre-existing inequalities made COVID-19 worse, and that COVID-19 in turn made inequalities worse. There is here a vicious cycle that threatens trust and social cohesion. Therefore, we recommend stronger redistributed policies and universal access to basic public services like health, education, and social security.
Meanwhile, wealthy firms that have done well during the pandemic could pay more in taxes to finance recovery efforts, says the IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva at a news conference unveiling her 2021 global policy agenda. The renewed support for the tax reforms comes as G20 finance ministers are meeting to discuss a minimum corporate tax that would undermine the use of tax havens that drain government coffers. Watch this.
And as indicated by the G20 today,
we will propose a new SDR allocation of $650 billion. This will help address the long-term global need for reserve assets and provide substantial liquidity boost to all our members, especially the most vulnerable. To unlock this potential, countries will need sufficient public revenues, and they would need more efficient spending. In many cases, this will mean more progressive taxation and an agreement on questions like minimum taxation for companies and international tax rights. This year, next, vaccine policy is economic policy. Faster progress in ending the health crisis could add almost $9 trillion to global GDP by 2025, best value for public money in our times. But this window of opportunity is closing fast. Once the health crisis is over, governments should gradually scale back support programs and scale up targeted hiring subsidies and retraining and reskilling. This is particularly important for low-skilled workers, youth, and women who have borne the brunt of the crisis. Viable small businesses need more help through equity injections and better restructuring procedures. A question: 2021 has the potential to be the year of climate action. We have the stars aligning. We have the G7 presidency making this a priority. The G20 presidency, we just came from the G20 finance ministers meeting, making this a priority. What this crisis has shown us is just how unescapable our shared destiny is. Now we must build on this broader sense of common responsibility to foster a fair recovery and a resilient post-pandemic world. Thank you.
Meanwhile, President Joe Biden on Wednesday cast his proposed $2 trillion infrastructure plan as a make-or-break moment for ensuring U.S. supremacy on the world stage against a rising China. Take a look.
200 years ago, trains weren't traditional infrastructure either, until America made a choice to lay down tracks across the country. Highways weren't traditional infrastructure, until we allowed ourselves to imagine that roads could connect our nation across state lines. The idea of infrastructure has always evolved to meet the aspirations of the American people and their needs. And it's evolving again today. We all agreed 5 years ago that it should come down somewhat. But the previous administration reduced it all the way down to 21%. What I'm proposing is that we meet in the middle. 28%. 28% would still have lower corporate rates than any time between World War II and 2017. And will generate over $1 trillion in taxes over 15 years. I'm not trying to punish anybody, but damn it. Maybe it's because I come from a middle-class neighborhood. I'm sick and tired of ordinary people being fleeced. This week, I'm open to ideas about how to pay for this plan, with one exception. I will not impose any tax increases on people making less than $400,000 a year. Do you think China is waiting around to invest in this digital infrastructure or in research and development? I promise you, they are not waiting. But they're counting on American democracy to be too slow, too limited, and too divided to keep pace.
The information from more than 530 million Facebook accounts has just been noticed on a hacker website. Facebook said Tuesday that hackers scraped personal data of some 500 million users back in 2019 by taking advantage of a feature designed to help people easily find friends using contact lists. Facebook IDs relationship status, bios, birthdays, all of this could be compromised. The stolen data did not include passwords or financial data, according to Facebook. Scraping is a tactic that involves using automated software to gather up information shared publicly online. Alan Gall, Chief Technology Officer at the Hudson Rock cybercrime intelligence firm, denounced what he called the absolute negligence of Facebook. Analysts say this is a reminder that no information that people share with online services can even be guaranteed to stay private, and that people should only ever share what they would accept appearing in a public database somewhere down the line. Facebook Product Management Director Mike Clark urged members of the social network to check their privacy settings to control what information can be seen publicly and to tighten account security with two-factor authentication.
All right, we're actually going to feature a high-level experience, a breathtaking panorama onto the Swiss Alps at the Glacier 3000. Trina Joyce Asuga from our EBC Switzerland Bureau takes us there.
Glacier 3000 is located at Côte du Pilon between Gstaad and Les Diablerets in western Switzerland. Our journey begins by riding a bus-sized cable car that takes you to the top of the mountain, giving us views of a stunning panorama of the Swiss Alps. You can also have a peek of iconic mountains such as Mont Blanc, Matterhorn, Eiger, Mönch, and Jungfrau. During both winter and summer, you can enjoy a wide variety of sports activities. In the wintertime, there's an 8-kilometer ski slope starting at 3,000 meters, going down to 1,300 meters, called the Red Run Slope, and a snow park for professional riders to perform different jumps. Otherwise, there's a fun park for non-skiers offering sledding, or you can go for a hike along the glacier walk to see the splendid view of the Swiss Alps. During summer, you can ride the Alpen coaster, which is fun for the kids. There are also different hiking trails. You can even ride on a sled drawn by huskies, which is available all year round. To experience a unique adventure, don't forget to experience the famous Fierce Peak Wall, or how about going shopping or dining at the restaurant, which will complete your unique experience with the Swiss Alps. But due to the COVID-19 restrictions, kindly check their website before coming for any changes. I hope this gives you the urge to visit Glacier 3000. I am Trina Joyce Asuga from the EBC Switzerland Bureau. We live in interesting times.
Don't you miss traveling?
Oh, are you gonna go with me? I do. But would you go with me there? I know you don't like hikes.
Of course I would go with you.
That goes in the list now. That's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for catching the news tonight. Please join us again tomorrow. I am CJ Hero.
And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. We'll see you back tomorrow. I'm Alma Angeles, and
we live
in interesting times.
This program is supported by BMEG Premium at Protect Plus Gold. Sama-sama sa laban, walang iwanan.